Hello there, welcome to Neppy Invests. Today I'm going to do a technical update on the buy now, pay later sector, looking at all the charts of all the companies in this. So there's about seven companies, so I'll be looking at the charts and all that. I haven't done many videos on buy now, pay later, but they're very popular. And I do have a little bit of a history with buy now, pay later. So I'll just get into that right now. And this is one of the reasons I'm doing a video on this sector. So I've indirectly owned Afterpay about 3 times. The first time I bought Afterpay was 3 years ago now, something like that anyway. And the reason I bought it was I just started seeing all these Afterpay signs and all these shops started popping up. I started hearing about Afterpay on just talk and chatter, just here and there, and on podcasts, people talking about Afterpay in the lunchroom, very small things, and that sort of thing gets me interested in the company. So I did buy Afterpay. I've sold them a couple of times. Last time I held Afterpay was in my super, and then I decided to sell Afterpay simply because I had indirect ownership in Afterpay, and that was much harder to sell. In fact, I don't even know how to sell my indirect ownership in Afterpay. So I decided to sell my direct ownership. That was much easier. So I'll get into how I indirectly own Afterpay in the next slide. I've day traded Zip once, so I owned Zip for about 2 hours. I made about $100 out of that day trade, but I've only day traded twice in my history, and both times have been success. This was $100, and the only other time I've day traded, I doubled my money in less than a day, which was a fluke, wasn't skill. So don't come to me asking me how I did it. It was all fluke. And about 5 years ago, I actually owned Flexigroup, and Flexigroup will be rebranded Humm soon, sooner or later. And so those who know about buy now, pay later probably never heard of Flexigroup, but they've definitely heard of Humm, which is a good reason why management of Flexigroup have decided to rebrand their name. So, and funny enough, Flexigroup sort of is the original, maybe not the original buy now, pay later, but they did have some sort of buy now, pay later schemes within their business 5 or so years ago. And they just didn't have the foresight to see this was a potential booming sort of sector. And just goes to show you if management are very important, how they look or foresee whatever trends that might exist in the future. So if Flexigroup management did see that trend happening, they could have become the forerunner in this sector instead of Afterpay, but they didn't, and they're now trying to catch up. So how do I have an indirect ownership in Afterpay? So actually, here's an interesting story, and is a lesson in patience and not always selling out of a company just because they delist on the ASX. So in about 2014 or 15, I bought a company called ThinkSmart. I don't even know why I bought them. They was profitable by a slight bit, but they have a business in England, something to do with financing phones or cars. The company they were dealing with was called Dixon, and interesting enough, that sort of relationship with Dixon has now gone by the way. It's disintegrated. It's vanished. They no longer care about that relationship with Dixon. But anyway, because of that, all their business was in England. They decided to delist on the ASX in late 2016. And the company said you will be willing to buy your shares at certain prices. Wasn't happy with the prices they were willing to sell or buy at. And I remember getting actually a phone call from Commonwealth Bank, because I had my holdings in CommSec at the time, saying, am I willing to sell the shares at a certain price? I said no, I wasn't willing. I thought it was too much on the low side. So I just decided to hold on and just have a shareholding on the AIM in London. So they listed on the AIM in London, and nothing really happened for a while. In fact, the share price went from 20p, which they listed at the AIM, all the way down to 5p like a year later. And I just started not following at all what they were doing. And then one day I got a massive check in the mail from ThinkSmart. And I was like, what the hell is this from? And that's when I decided to do a bit of research, and I had no idea. ThinkSmart, I'm not sure they've developed ClearPay, but they own ClearPay. So for those Afterpay shareholders right now, they're probably nodding their head going, oh yeah, ClearPay. So ThinkSmart were the owners of ClearPay. And then in August 2018, this is why I got this large check, Afterpay acquired most of ClearPay. So Afterpay acquired 90% of the shares in ClearPay, an entity which is 100% owned by ThinkSmart. And so ThinkSmart got 1 million Afterpay shares, which I think they've sold most of that by now. And they also retain 10% of ClearPay. So that is how I have an indirect ownership in Afterpay through ThinkSmart, which owns 10% of ClearPay. So the better Afterpay or ClearPay does, the better ThinkSmart does, and we've definitely seen that with the share price, and we've also seen that with capital return coming into my bank account from ThinkSmart. This is just the share price history of ThinkSmart. They're at 62p now, so share price has really rapidly increased. So my holding's actually quite big now. It's gone up about 3 or 4 times from when I own them on the ASX. And you can see on the bottom left-hand side, the net assets of ThinkSmart have gone from £16.5 million to £66.5 million, which equates to about 62 pence. And 62 pence is actually the share price it is now. So share price is equated to the assets they have in ClearPay, simply because that's all they've got now, because that relationship with Dixon's just gone by the way now. So an interesting story that if I wasn't patient and just sold them just because I didn't want to have a listing on a foreign exchange, I would have lost out a fair bit of money here. So this is one time where patience has really paid off. In fact, patience usually pays off in the long term. In fact, if I had to argue anything, I think patience is the most important thing an investor can have. So now let's look at the charts of all these companies. So first of all, Afterpay, and if I had to say which one is the better looking chart out of all the buy now pay later companies, it's definitely Afterpay. So I've got a bit of an uptrend there in the pink, so that pink straight line to the right, upper right, is just the uptrend, and it's remained above that uptrend line. And in fact, there's a bit of a resistance, or actually now support at about $95. So good uptrend, it's continuing. We've started to see the volume start to dip back a bit. So the highest volume was definitely during COVID-19, when lots of retailers were starting to get into Afterpay. So at this stage, nothing to be concerned about if you're an Afterpay shareholder, which I am indirectly an Afterpay shareholder. Zip. Zip was in a nice little uptrend here, so you can see a bit of an uptrend. It may have broken through that uptrend in the last week or so, with the overall market being fairly weak. In fact, there is sort of a hint of a head and shoulders during the past 3 or 4 months. And head and shoulders, you have that tall peak in the end of August, and around that peak we have 2 smaller peaks, and that's sort of a head and shoulders. I'll get into that details of head and shoulders later in the video. So not quite as bullish, this chart. In fact, you might say it's a little bit bearish. In fact, it's right on a bit of support at the share price of about $5.72 now. If it falls below $5.72 towards $5, I'll be a little bit bearish. If it falls below $5, it'll be extremely bearish. It won't be a good sign. I'm going to do a video on all the finances of all these companies, their quarterly finances, which might shed a bit of light on what's happening in this sector. Splitit, this seems to be trading in a bit of a channel in the last about 4 or 5 months. So between about $1.30 and about $1.90. So it's reached $1.90 twice, and both times it's sold off. And it's reached about $1.30 about 3 or 4 times. And it's getting towards that $1.30 range right now. So that could be a time to buy. If it falls below that, see that horizontal red line, which is the bottom one, is the bottom channel line. Falls below that, that will be bearish. And if it goes above the top right, the top horizontal line, which is the top of the channel, that will be quite bullish. So at this stage, just trading in a range, trading range, and so I'm not that interested in Splitit at the moment. Sezzle, it's talking about how Zip might have had a head and shoulders, and it looks like Sezzle might have a head and shoulders. So head and shoulders is simply a possibility of a change in trend. So it's been an uptrend, and this is suggesting there might be a change in trend. So that's what that red or that black squiggly line is. That's the head and shoulders. We've got the head, which is the highest point, and then round two shoulders. And the blue horizontal line is sort of the neckline, and if it falls below the neckline, that will be bearish again. You could say there's still a bit of an uptrend. I've got an uptrend, pink, the sloped line to the right. That's a possibility, a bit of an uptrend. So it's still an uptrend. So if it falls below that neckline, which it will, if it does, it's also falling below the trend line. And that will be sort of a confirmation of a change in sentiment, change in trend, and it could be going lower, the share price. So what is head and shoulders? So this is just an example of head and shoulders, which shows you the left shoulder, the right shoulder, the head. So the left and right shoulder don't have to be always equal. In Sezzle, I think the left and right shoulder were equal, but this is just a general pattern you see, and the neckline is important. If it falls below the neckline, that's bearish. And they've also got the trend line in this company, CNET Networks, from, this looks like 1998, so a fairly old chart from stock charts. So that's just one example of something I will look at. So when I look at technical analysis, what do you call this? Indicator or something. Flexigroup or Humm now. I've mentioned that Afterpay was probably the better looking chart or the best looking chart, except for IOU, which I'll get to last. Flexigroup, I've mentioned here Flexigroup, so misspelled it there. So Flexigroup is probably the worst looking chart without a doubt. In fact, this definitely has a downtrend. So the pink line here is sloped downwards, and it's met, I've got 3 points where it's meet the downtrend. So the more points you can get meeting in a downtrend, the stronger the trend is. So with it only meeting twice, it's not as strong as this sort of situation where it's meeting the line 3 times. In fact, the third time there, if you can see my mouse here, this time here is when they made the announcement they're going to rebrand to Humm. And so it opened right on this line, and then a lot of selling. So there would have been a lot of selling because it met the trend line. And it's still going lower. In fact, it closed on Friday lower than the previous low, so pretty bearish pattern this. It's in the downtrend. There's no point buying this simply because it's in a downtrend. It's now reached a lower low. So at the moment, if you are a fan of Flexigroup or Humm, you can just wait this out and wait for it to become an uptrend. There is a possibility once they do make it an official, once they start trading as Humm, it might generate more interest because a lot of people don't know that Flexigroup is Humm, but when they see the Humm ticker code, they're going to go, oh, Humm, it's trading now, oh, wow. So there might be a bit of interest when Humm starts trading as Humm. So I'll wait to see when that happens. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Openpay, one of the newest ones. So this is their history of Openpay. As I mentioned before, this did have an uptrend that touched it about 3 times. It's gone through that uptrend in early September, and it started to trend a little bit downwards. So it looks like the uptrend has been completed. This is almost head and shoulders too, if you look at it, but not quite. And right now it's at a nice area of support. So if it goes below the price it is right now, about $2.60, falls like $2.50 to $2.25, that would be quite bearish. So a lot of these, getting a lot of potential bearish signals out of all these buy now, pay later companies, except really Afterpay. Laybuy hasn't been around for very long, so there's not much doing here. In fact, when it IPO'd around about $2.10 or so, it's actually fallen a fair bit since then. So no trend upwards, so I'm not interested in Laybuy at all at these prices, simply because there's no trend, or if you do see a trend, it's down. And probably the most bullish chart is maybe IOUpay, which is getting into the buy now, pay later in Asia, and it's quite popular stock on Hot Cuppa. I did a little video on IOUpay because I did know they're going to rebrand to IOUpay. I did mention maybe they were getting into the buy now, pay later. I wasn't sure. I haven't seen any official announcement behind that, but definitely market has become interested in IOUpay, and you can see a very good uptrend in the share price with IOUpay. So this is I think about 10 cents. You can see my mouse here. 10 cents would have been a good time to buy about here. In fact, I was going to buy IOUpay at that point, but I had some other companies I was buying at that point, and I think IOUpay would have been the better choice if I had my way again. But other than that, there's no regrets when you make a decision, or you shouldn't have regrets anyway. Just maybe learn from your decisions. So that's all I've got on Buy Now, Pay Later technical analysis. If you have any questions on these companies, just leave a comment in the comment section. Otherwise, I'm not a professional advisor. I've taken no courses in technical analysis. I've just learned it through time. I'm still learning quite a bit. So I'm ever learning in the technical analysis world. In fact, when I first started investing, I was all fundamentals, no technical, and I've sort of adjusted my thinking during the years, become sort of half technical, half fundamental. So in my next video on Buy Now, Pay Later, I'll do a sort of a quarter financial update on all these companies, just to look at the financial, where they're heading and how they did in the last quarter. So that's all for now. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.